welcome. Thank you for joining me so early in the morning at this ungodly hour. But it's a good reason to get up because firstly it's our last panel of New York Fashion Week, but also we're going to be discussing the Marc Jacobs show. So it's a really, really exciting one. And I have a very exciting panel as well. But I'll let you guys introduce yourselves to kick things off, starting with you, Harriet.
Hello, I'm Harriet Quick. I'm a writer and journalist and a consultant to Lane Crawford.
Hi, I'm Tilly Macalister-Smith. I'm Fashion Features Editor at matchesfashion.com.
And I'm Alex Fullerton, and I'm Fashion Director at Stylist magazine.
I'm Emma Elwick-Bates. I'm the Style Editor of British Vogue.
I'm Alex Fury. I'm the Fashion Editor of The Independent.
Really, really strong panel today, which I like, lots of good opinions. Obviously we're here to talk about Marc Jacobs, but I think you can't really not talk about Marc by Marc Jacobs at this Fashion Week because it was such a sort of standout show from New York. Alex, you were saying before that you got talked through the collection by Luella and Katie. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I wasn't in New York for the show. I left on Monday afternoon, so I went to see them on Sunday, and they very nicely showed me through everything. That was me being buzzed out because I'm not allowed to say anything. But
swearing.
Yeah, no, they talked me through it. It was really nice. They were obviously incredibly excited about it. I think for Luella, because she showed her last collection in 2009. I think she was incredibly excited to be kind of designing again. And for me, the thing that was really kind of satisfying was that you could see those sort of Luella signatures running through it. I think there was a lot of Luella in that show.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it was because I think, you know, when Marc by Marc Jacobs started, which was in like 2000, his clothes and Luella's clothes appealed to the same sort of person. It was the same, you know, you don't want to say cool, but really that's what it was about. And really, I think Marc by Marc Jacobs kind of fell off the fashion radar, but back then it was, you know, it really did have its own must-have pieces of the season. You know, there was the denim frock coat they did kind of jeans with biro scribbled on them. Which sound really basic, but back then they were real kind of
the rainbow belts, the crease front jeans.
Such covetable fashion items. And I think the thing that I really loved about this collection was I felt like it went back to that place. And also that it felt like there was a bit of Luella's greatest hits there. And there was an accessibility to it. It wasn't, what I said about it was that it wasn't aspirational, it was accessible. It was clothes that you would buy, you'd go out, wear, rip, you know, get drunk in, you might lose them, and then you buy them again before the end of the season, because it's that, and that's kind of exactly what that person will want from that collection. And that's not to say that it doesn't have a fashion value. I really thought it was fantastic, and also it was tied together. It had such a cohesive voice and opinion of its own, and I think especially now when you contrast it with Marc Jacobs by Marc Jacobs, they're two completely different entities. It's not as if Marc by Marc was a watered down version of the main line from season past or anything like that. It had such a kind of discernible identity. It had such a niche that it fitted into, and it was just really satisfying to see. I was absolutely gutted that I couldn't see the show.
There was lots of nodding during that. We were all really impressed by it.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Marc by Marc has, in previous seasons, started to feel a little bit referential of like particular decades and things like that, and it just felt really modern and energetic and completely sort of the now, really.
And its own destination now. Before, just a load of nice clothes. You might browse in a shop. Now you'd go there and you'd be like, I want that, that and that, in the same way that many other labels are.
So it's got its own kind of fashion credential as its own independent label. That doesn't feel just like, as Alex said, derivative of Marc Jacobs.
But I think
I don't think it ever was derivative of the main line though. I think it always stood on its own as being quite unashamedly, it was always about that great vintage find that you want kind of remade, and it was unashamedly referential to eras and items. But that energy had gone, but now they've brought that attitude back where you think, wow, where have I gone from BMX to like oversized tailoring and via those great kickbox boots, and it all kind of looks amazing. So I think that's the excitement. It's the sort of the disparate gelling of ideas.
I also think it was a great show, and that's in the past. I think it's been like what you said, Alex. You go in there to get a single piece. But as a show, it's not the kind of show that you get really excited about, whereas this one, there was kind of this excitement.
The casting, the styling, everything.
The set,
It just felt exciting.
Did you miss Luella a lot, Emma?
Pardon?
Had you missed Luella a lot? Were you happy to see her back?
Yeah, I was a big Luella fan.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got that vibe back.
No, I think she's been missed, but I think, you know, it's great she's had her hiatus and then she's come back really strong, and I think what's interesting is having all those Katie ideas, because, you know, Katie's obviously famed for her accessories, but, you know, she's just always just bubbling with so many ideas, and I think the two of them, it's quite a force.
Well, I think as well, for me, they worked together on those very early Luella collections, and I think you looked at it this time and it had that spark that those early Luella collections really had, you know, where they did become iconic. And when I was going through it with Luella, there was a point where there was a red and white shirt, and we both kind of grabbed it and we both went looking hard in the yard. And it was like kind of this, you know, symbiotic moment of, yes, I know what you're talking about. Like I know this is kind of referencing back into your career, and that's. I think also it's great that it's kind of what you wanted her to bring. You wanted her to bring a sense of herself to it as well. I think that's why they were employed, because they have a certain aesthetic and they have a certain stamp. And I kind of underestimated what it represented them going to Marc Jacobs, because when they came out and took a bow, I was like, oh, this is the first time somebody else has taken a bow at a Marc Jacobs show. This is quite an important moment.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the changes that are happening with Marc Jacobs as a company, and what Robert Duffy and Marc Jacobs are doing there by handing this over to someone else. What does that mean, and what does it suggest for the collection we're about to look at?
I think it's more relevant that Marc's no longer the creative director of Louis Vuitton, and that's freeing up time. He will be able to spend, you know, however he wants to spend his time. He might want to do pottery classes, but
let's hope so.
I don't think he was ever that involved with Marc by Marc. You know, whether he becomes more involved with the two new protégés, amazing, that's great, and what it means for his own business and his stores. And I think he's himself and Robert the first to kind of say, yes, as Alex was saying, Marc by Marc has got a bit tired, it kind of went a bit off track, and maybe we need to rethink that. And I think they're quite honest about that, rather than trying to say it's just being a blazing, glorious history of, you know. I think that's interesting. It's more for somebody who works so hard, what's it mean when Marc will have more time?
Yeah. Do we think we'll see a big impact on his own collections from having left Vuitton?
I think I think definitely, but one of the things is as well, when like LVMH invested in Marc Jacobs, it was like a $20 million company, and now it's, you know, there's reports that it's touching $1 billion. It's not like he's going to have loads of time. It's a massive company, you know, and it'll just, I mean, I suppose it'll allow him, like you say, Harriet, more time to oversee every sort of aspect of the company. It's not just, you know, his main line, but it's Marc by Marc. It's the t-shirt lines, it's the accessory lines, it's the perfume,
beauty as well.
everything.
It's going to be a huge push for him.
And he'll be able to sort of put his stamp more on, make it more of a cohesive kind of message.
So we're expecting sort of world domination.
Well, I think it's almost acknowledging that idea that Marc Jacobs in itself has now become, I don't want to say like a Chanel or a Dior, but it's on its way to being that. It has a beauty line, which is quite exceptional. You know, and it's suggesting that Marc Jacobs in itself is a kind of empire, and certainly having an outside designer in designing one of the signature lines and openly designing one of the signature lines. They're not a member of a design team, they are the head designer, the creative director of Marc by Marc Jacobs. That is kind of acknowledging. It's also almost cementing the legacy, the idea that Marc Jacobs is going to carry on even without Marc Jacobs, in the same way that Dior did, in the same way that Givenchy does, you know.
It's so confident just to be like, yes, you can do it. I'm Marc Jacobs, this is my brand. There you go. And to let them totally do their own thing, which it really looks like they did. Yeah, it's just like, not blasé, but confident. Just like, it's fine.
No, definitely. I think that's interesting, because it kind of leads me to my next question. I was going to ask, what do we look for when we look to Marc Jacobs? You know, I know we've talked about how diverse his company is, but what does he stand for? And I think confidence is obviously such a huge part of that. But what is the kind of, I hate this phrase, what is the Marc Jacobs sort of DNA? What are the Marc Jacobs codes, to use another fashion cliche?
I don't think there are Marc Jacobs codes. It's the same as I actually was talking with Andrew Bolton from the Met about Prada, and he said to me, oh, I feel like Miuccia Prada is the same as Marc Jacobs. I was like, actually, it's very, very true, in that Miuccia Prada doesn't have a signature per se. So, you know, you couldn't boil it. It's not like Dior, it's not the bar suit. You know, there's something that's, there's something that's incredibly identifiable, but it's not easy to identify. That's the thing. There's something about them. There's a handwriting to the clothes that let you know who it's from. And I think with Marc Jacobs, it's this constantly kind of changing repertoire. For a long time, you think of the bags and you thought of those buckles and clasps and a certain type of construction. And with Prada as well, there are certain elements that kind of indicate Miuccia Prada's hand, but they change every season. And I think there's something incredibly strong and very modern about the fact that they're not tied down to reinterpreting a single garment, reinterpreting a single look, but still can have something that's so kind of such a hallmark of what they do.
It's that confidence to work independently almost.
I think they're both mavericks, absolute mavericks, and mercurial, and they're both Miuccia Prada and Marc Jacobs. They kind of are the image makers and taste makers of our day, and I think both of them share an ability to pierce what's going on and beyond fashion, within culture, within society. They're interested in that within art field. They can kind of have that antennae that feeds back and sort of create something quite magical in what they're doing, because somehow it has a resonance on and beyond a jacket or a pair of trousers, and I think that's very attractive.
You sort of keep learning about the collections through the season, because you'll then see, some art reference or something else that it all feeds back into that. And I think you don't really, both Marc Jacobs and Prada really changed the trajectory of a season. We were all seeing all these pastels and this lightness and fluidity, and then Marc delivers kind of black jet crystal and Victoriana, and it really impacts in its kind of own individual way, but shifts everything for the season.
I'll always kind of go back at the end of the season and look back, and then see what he did in New York, and then be like, there's some there, there's some there, there's some there.
Makes sense.
And if he's done it, then everybody else, it's okay for it to become a trend.
That was obviously amazing with when he was bookending the entire season. You start and then you end on Vuitton, and suddenly you realise it all makes sense because of him. And it will be interesting now that we don't have that closure and his stamp in Paris. It'll be quite interesting.
No, definitely. What does he, it's a simplistic question in a way, but what does he need to do here because of that? As you mentioned, he's not doing Vuitton anymore, he's not going to bookend the season.
I think it will make just New York more exciting. I think New York has become quite flat, and I think, New York will be his town again, and I think we'll really feel his presence.
I think the way that I always think about it, if you try to simplify things incredibly, who matters in each season? Who matters in each city?
Yeah.
Like, it's Marc in New York, Prada in Milan are the two very simple ones. And then if you had to sum it up, it's probably Christopher Kane in London, and hopefully with him going back to Vuitton, it's Guesquière in Paris. And actually, when you look at it, each of those don't have a signature that they reinterpret every season. It's not about something seasonal. It's not about, or rather, it's not about something kind of constant. It's about that flux and the fact there's something that's weirdly indicative of their handwriting, even though it's completely different every season. There's something that's kind of unexplainably them about what they're doing, and I think that's why they're the sort of, I always try and do that because that's what John Fairchild did in the 80s, saying these are the 5 designers that the world hangs from, and they're like, well, for me these are the ones that matter in each city. If there's a single designer in each city that matters, it's not even necessarily that they sum up what the city's about, because I think Karl Lagerfeld at Chanel sums up what Paris is about. But these are kind of the catalysts that push fashion into a new place. Obviously that's very kind of, it's going to be very interesting, I think, to see Nicolas Guesquière back in that dynamic, because there have been certain designers that have been very referential of what he's done, and they felt a little bit lost for a few seasons. So they're now going to have some inspirational nuggets to mine again.
Who are you talking about?
I refuse to name names. There's quite a few. There's one that designs the house that he used to.
Should we have a look at what Marc Jacobs has done for this season then? Thanks, Liam. So yeah, we've got, I think you probably saw this all over Instagram because the show was in the middle of the night, but it's a set by Stefan Beckmann, All the Clouds, which is absolutely beautiful.
So let's sing a song of cheer again.
And it's Jessica Lang.
Happy days are here again. So long, sad times. Go long, bad times, we are rid of you at last. Howdy, gay times. cloudy grey times you are now a thing.
I saw a tweet that somebody backstage had said he wanted the whole sound and music to sound like a spa, and that it was kind of like mind cleansing.
Yeah, didn't he say he wanted like the purity of a clinic? Yeah.
Sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again. All together, shout it now. There's no one who can doubt it now. So let's tell the world about it now. Happy days are here again. Their cares and troubles are gone.
Alex, you said you stayed up for the live stream because of your...
I always stay up for the live stream of Marc Jacobs.
What did you think?
Because it's the one that matters, and it's the one that I've not been able to see. So it's I always stay up to see it. I think I think Marc Jacobs is fantastically perverse. I love the idea that he did a black collection for summer and then he does a white collection for winter. It's completely the opposite of what fashion tells you you're supposed to do. And I just think that's fantastic. Kind of as soon as it started to come out, I think you knew it was going to be white. Or you knew it was going to be pastel at least.
It's quite interesting though that on that when he delivered his black collection with the sort of the caveat that I don't know any women that wear white head to toe, and you know that's not what modern women want to be wearing, and then this comes out. Yeah.
These look lovely though, the tunics and the leggings. There's there's a beautiful kind of balletic
really
simplicity about it.
Yeah, I think that simplicity is quite an interesting point because I think there's a quietness to this collection which almost surprised me, given that there's going to be so much hype around it
before or for a long time from him.
Yeah.
No ostentation, no sort of surface decoration.
Like the white beard cuts.
Are you a fan of it, Emma? Do you like what you're seeing?
I know, I do. I love it.
I love the panelling inside the leg and the arm.
And that very like tailored little trouser and the dress. It's like, these are practical, they're commercial, but he still can like bring that kind of cool resonance of it with just those little twists of the styling, like the boot cut with the tunic. We've not seen that since late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Harriet, you were saying before about the wearability of his pieces and his collections, and this seems a much more sort of commercial offering, which isn't a derogatory term at all.
I think this is Marc proving that, I am back in New York full time. I make a grown-up New York women clothes. It's that American sportswear reference. I think this is really him saying, I am New York.
It's very American.
That's me. I feel like it's purposely
very
gone down that track.
Holston, almost Michael Kors.
It's almost like, heyday Plum Sykes hairstyling.
And there's a lot of cashmere here.
Yeah.
I mean, this woman looks like a sort of enlightened woman that's maybe been a yoga teacher, it's sort of empowered but in a really soft way.
Yeah.
I always think when I look at a show, I'm like, who's that girl going to be when I shoot it? And she is, I want to do something a little bit vintagey, so kind of that late 70s, early 80s girl, and she's kind of got her smooth hair.
Yeah.
Maybe she's not Ally McGraw because she was too hippie, but in her smarter outfits, and just so self-possessed. And I would like to be her.
Yeah, no, there's definitely that element about that where it's kind of aspirational in terms of wanting to be that calm woman.
Yeah, well, this is kind of, I'm an expensive New York woman. I glide through life with clouds in my head.
Ultimately in touch with
exactly.
We were talking while she came out, but and it got quite a lot of comment, but there was a Jenner in the show, Kendall Jenner from Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
In the show?
It's nothing to me.
She's the one that was dating Harry Styles, allegedly.
What do we think of the Kardashian fashion? Because there's a lot of Kim Kardashian on the cover of Vogue chat at the moment. What do we think of him doing that? He does that kind of pop culture thing very well.
He's not a snob, and that's what I like about him. I think he knows he can make those people cool, or he can find something
she
cool
looks amazing.
in them,
And they're people who can afford to buy the clothes. and people will want to be like them, so it helps in a clever way.
And it's like Alex was saying, it's like, you know, black for summer, white for winter. You know, you may think she's tacky, I think she's fabulous. You know, he was the early one that picked up on Victoria Beckham and put her in the Gilbert.
Yeah.
Look at these little fluffy coats.
I know, they're so good. They're my favourites.
It's very clever because it's pretty retrograde, you know, like the frosted lip, the blown out makeup, it's very icy, it's very kind of retro, but it does feel contemporary.
It actually reminds me of elements of Jean Muir and that sort of...
That rib neck.
Very proper, it's the proper element of it.
Yeah. Poised, yeah.
There is a kind of, there's something a little bit sinister to it though, which I love that he manages to always do that, and he always manages to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that feels very
slightly, you know, they could be on Stranspan or Valiant. There is that slightly, you know, that wealthy lady, you know, she's got everything in the world, but she's still slightly smacked out.
Yeah, it's definitely, she's on Valium here.
It's sort of hypnosis via fashion.
I thought this was really beautiful, this sort of trompe-l'oeil print, which then moves into the organza as it comes out later. I had a little bit this morning.
I thought that was really beautiful as well.
What was the actual, what film?
It's a 1930s song that was repopularised by Judy Garland and Barbara Streisand in the 60s.
In the 60s, yeah.
So it's kind of Depression era.
He's also a great showman, like, I mean, it fits cohesively with the whole set and the sound, the music, you know, the makeup, the casting, everything as well. Like, it is a beautiful performance.
There's also an irony, you know, whenever there's a change in the air in fashion, everyone goes, oh, it was a palette cleansing collection. There is something very cleansing about this, you know, in the very literal spa-like sense. These are my favourite.
Yeah, these are beautiful.
Your cares and troubles are gone. There'll be no more.
All these sort of organic shapes.
Yeah.
It's very, very luxurious. Where everywhere else is tilting towards utility, you've got head to toe.
It's a very Giorgio Armani colour palette, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's got that same feel, you know, that weird cultish smile thing that you get. Oh, honey, I quite like that.
And the cultish clap.
Yeah, the cultish clap, and everything's very clean.
Well, it's dreamscape here.
Yeah.
And it's just back to that confidence thing, isn't it? It's just very unshouty, it's sort of not making any grand gestures.
All happy days here again then, do we think? It's good times for Marc Jacobs. We're impressed.
I'm very impressed.
Good.
I think it will linger, this collection.
Yeah, they're always slow burners, aren't they? You sort of see it once and then you revisit it and then you sort of get into it like the fourth time you've seen it.
And little things, like I want to straighten my hair now.
Yeah. I just want to do a massive chop.
After this, I'd be a bit nervous of a ribbed legging boot cut trouser there.
Yeah, I'm nervous about that as well.
But he's always quite often pioneered that kind of dress over trousers or tunic over a boot cut.
Yeah. I don't think I'm ready for a boot cut return.
I'm quite
Just you wait, we'll ask you in 6 months. Yeah.
I was in the Vogue archive yesterday and I was looking around like 94 to 2000 and the boot cut worked.
Yeah.
Feeling it.
I remember wearing it and feeling really cool. Maybe I just need to go and go vintage shopping and embrace it. Are you impressed, Alex? You're staying remarkably quiet.
Well, I think this is a very quiet collection. I think that's
channeling
kind of. But I think the very interesting thing about it is, I think there were lots of very high expectations, and it feels like this is a riposte to that. So it's almost like by doing something purposefully quiet. I mean, it really feels like it's very refined.
Yes.
And it's very minimal, and it's very New York. It's actually very much in that vein of the 1990s. To be honest, when it first came out, I was really reminded of his first collection for Vuitton, which I thought was very interesting. It's very much of that era, of that kind of 98 when he first went to Louis Vuitton. It's very similar to what he did then for his own label, which was a focus on incredibly luxurious fabrics and this slightly retro feel of, you know, late 60s, early 70s. And lots of Halston referencing. I think there's a lot of Halston referencing in there.
Yeah.
But also when you think about it, Halston was a designer who I think was really underestimated because he was incredibly handsome and was incredibly savvy publicity-wise. And I think sometimes the same is true of Marc Jacobs. We really underestimate him because he's a great media personality. He gives a great sound
You forget
vibe.
that they're great clothes
And he
to
does
wear
things like
to
Finn
buy,
and Jenner
which is
in the
what
show. He
Halston
does that
did.
pop thing.
It
He
was-
really plays for.
But also I think he did the thing that Halston did was, you know, Halston would make a dress with a single seam, Halston would make a dress with no seams. Halston did a lot with very little, and it kind of feels like maybe Marc is showing that he can do the same thing, that he doesn't have to have bells and whistles.
I think after that Vuitton show and the Showgirl theatrics,
Yeah, completely.
I think it's important maybe for him to show that.
Well, I think what should
It
be
was Zoran actually as well who came.
Yes,
kind
yeah,
of
exactly. Zoran, Yuki, that whole 70s purist. It's quite
minimalist
pure.
purist. Yeah.
It's pure. It's a very pure collection, and it's almost like after, I think after the last Marc Jacobs, but specifically that last Louis Vuitton collection, where everything was embroidered, where everything,
and,
it was totally about the surface. You know, it was totally about embellishment. It was about the joy. Or it was about him enjoying Paris, and it was about revelling in the surfaces of Paris and in what Parisian ateliers can do. This is the total opposite. This is almost revelling in what 7th Avenue can do.
It's very
revelling
of the
in
city,
what
isn't it? Yeah.
American fashion really means.
And also that you know, it's underneath these beautiful cashmeres, you've got these fabulous kind of idea of a very toned, you know, toned ideal of a body as
Well,
well,
the kind
to
of
carry
colours-
those,
Completely.
to
It's
carry
very
those
American.
shapes.
The sort of
Very
city colours as well,
aspirational.
the kind of concrete colours. And as well, I think, you know, if American fashion didn't stop and, you know, start and end with Halston, there's, you know, even references to people like James Galanos and Adolfo, Oleg Cassini. There's this whole kind of, this sort of litany of American classicism that's in there. You know, Claire McCardle. It's very, what was the other one that I was?
Jeffrey
There was
Bean.
a lot of aprons, and I was thinking in New York generally, and I was thinking about that Jeffrey Bean.
Because I remember
Jeffrey
he
Bean, Bill
referenced,
Blass.
he referenced Jeffrey Bean in that collection a few years ago. Remember he did like the oversized sports t-shirts with the numbers and
Yeah. And weirdly, he's actually done this palette for a winter collection before he did it for winter 2008. Do you remember that one, which had the headbands, and the really big oversized coats? It was a very similar colour palette to this.
And does this go back to what we were saying, you know, before we even looked at the show, we were talking about this idea of how he used to bookend the season and now it's just New York, and we've all just spent a lot of time saying it feels very American. Is there something in that he's kind of taking back New York and celebrating
I
what
think
makes
he's
New York
saying,
great?
you know, I'm home, I'm giving you what New York does best because I'm now back.
Yeah.
Full time.
That literal move has been spoken about as well, spending time there. And
but I think it's also, I mean, there was the piece in Womenswear Daily where he talked about the fact that he could feasibly show this in Paris. And I think actually reinforcing the Americanism is very interesting, because if you were then to export this to a different country, what Marc Jacobs should represent in Paris is an American in Paris. Or what Marc Jacobs should represent, if he was to show anywhere, would be this New Yorker exported somewhere else. So I think it's almost refining what
He looks happy, doesn't he?
what his label really represents.
Looks incredibly serene.
I was going to say, he looks very of the mood, I love
little
the
lie
three
down.
stripe, the sports
Yeah,
wear.
that's so true. Looks like he's had a little nap. And it's just
Well, to be honest, he's designing
Stuff
one
with the
collection where he used to design 3 collections, so he probably has been having a little nap.
Is it nice to have something serene? We're not used to that in fashion, though. Especially with the pace and snowstorms, we're used to rushing around. So to have something, this felt quite new to me. But it felt
There's a
different.
lovely sense of nothingness, which I think is quite quintessentially American. You find that in the work of Ed Richet or, you know, Rick Moody, or you know, or that is that American nothingness.
Completely. Actually, it's even more nothingness in the pictures. It's so kind of
this will be one of the most influential shows of the season.
I think it was just really unexpected for him as well. There was so much hype around it that you expected it to be bells and whistles and that kind of energetic thing, and it, you know, it really only makes sense for him to do something.
And it goes back to what Alex was saying before, and Alexandra, I have to separate you, when you were saying about that confidence, and this felt so confident in its quietness, you know, to be able to, it's almost like those designers who do just show a really small collection, a really edited collection, and it tends to be the most confident, and to me this feels really kind of, obviously it's a big collection, but that focus and that simplicity shows that he's kind of at home.
There was also a lot of repetition in it, which I found very interesting. There was lots of reinforcing that tunic silhouette with the scarf. I think
he said about his
you see it come out 3 times.
And those beautiful necklines that have probably been painstakingly worked out, because there's, you know,
I think the beauty look is really strong as well, and that's, you know, maybe sort of a nod to another area of his business that he's working on, that you really sort of look at the hair and makeup.
Completely. I think it was actually quite hard to see it on the stream because the cameras moved around so much, but he did that thing, you know, sending models out where they didn't come sort of one at a time, they come in a 3 occasionally, which I thought was, there she is.
Yes,
there's the Janet.
in the cocoa coloured.
But that, we talked a little bit while the show was on, but that kind of designers that work very well with kind of the zeitgeist and what is pop culture, you know, Lagerfeld's a really obvious example, but I think you were talking about Victoria Beckham. Do you have to have that with fashion? It makes it feel quite new, that sense of sort of highbrow meets lowbrow done in a very intelligent way. What do we think about that?
I don't think you have to have it, but I think it's great that it's here. You know, I don't think if all designers and creatives had that magic, I think it would cancel each other out.
Completely.
And some designers are, you know, spend time perfecting seams and, you know, a one dress or a one suit, and others have that feeling for what's going on outside, and they have a tension to their work.
I do love that.
Like Rei Kawakubo. So it feels it's like it's the state of what fashion is now.
I think tension's a really good word. Do we like Miley Cyrus in the campaign?
I think my slight issue sometimes with Marc Jacobs latching on to certain people is it can feel quite empty, and I feel like sometimes it can feel like they're a seasonal sort of
shocker
flirt. You know, they will have them, use them, masticate them, spit them out. Sometimes it can feel a little bit like that, like it's a machine that latches onto something and exploits it and then gets rid of it. And also I feel sometimes that can really undermine the longevity of what you do. If you're too much, it's a very tricky balance. It's very tricky to capture the moment and encapsulate your moment without becoming trapped by that moment.
But I don't think he ever does it very seriously. You know, it's always with tongue in cheek, and I think that's kind of why it
But
works.
sometimes I wonder if he's laughing with them or at them. That's my slight issue with a few of them. Which is, I actually liked the Victoria Beckham one a lot because I feel like she was totally in on it. There's no way you sit in a bag with your legs hanging out of it and don't know what you're doing. And I actually think that's one of the best campaigns ever. Not the best much. I think it's one of the best advertising campaigns that's ever been created because it was completely perfect for then, but it has this longevity. It lasts. And with some people, I wonder if you know, the fact that they are kind of relevant in pop culture for such a short period of time, if it loses its impact.
Also with this, I don't think you can say it's a joke. Like, it wouldn't be to her. She's a young girl aspiring to be a high fashion model, and she's in a high fashion show. You know, there's not that.
Yeah, but does it have
comedy.
a point? Will it matter? Will you still be talking about that the way that we still talk about the Victoria Beckham campaign?
No,
probably not.
Exactly.
So
But there
that
is a
kind of thing
consciousness to
I
it,
have.
because it's all over. You know, that look that she was in, it was the one that everyone tweeted. It will be the kind of.
But that's just because people have.
But
that's because people have a knowledge of her. It's not because she was in the strongest look of the collection.
Yeah, but he knows that by putting her in there, that will be the kind of, that look will become synonymous with.
But
this
is that? I mean, personally, I don't look at models. I don't really care who's wearing it. And I kind of think that's, you know, having spoken with people that do kind of the beauty and things, it's kind of like if the beauty's really great, it's not the only thing you talk about. The beauty is part of creating what you talk about. Is doesn't this look great? Not even you know, it's something Vivienne Westwood said to Stephen Jones, but it's slightly insulting, which is if a woman's wearing a great hat, you know, if a hat is really great, you say, oh, what a beautiful woman, not, oh, I really like your hat. The idea is it completes you rather than it's the one thing you focus on. So sometimes with that kind of gimmick, I feel like it can really detract from, especially a collection like this that's incredibly quiet and that's incredibly refined. It can feel a little bit kind of needy almost.
Tokenistic.
Yes.
You didn't need to have her in there. Now we spent 5-10 minutes talking about whether she should have been in there.
Yeah.
And look at the clothes.
But then I also think, you know, I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm weird, but I'm not very plugged into that sort of thing. I wouldn't have known if you hadn't told me and I hadn't sort of read it or anything. So I ignore that kind of thing. I always say I don't really look above the neck unless they're wearing a hat. It's like, you know, that's...
You said she wasn't wearing the strongest look. What are our thoughts on what are our sort of the strongest looks of this collection, the best sections? We were talking about those beautiful looks at the end that we're seeing here.
I love these pieces that combine sort of all that really long line, but with this kind of, you know, beautiful tulle ruffle with it that sort of combines the front, you know, the first and the last sections.
I really like the shearlings, the ombre shearlings.
Me too.
I think those are beautiful.
The ombre shearlings.
And also they have that sense of, you know, I sometimes think, and I think this collection is a great example of the idea that seasons are becoming a little bit redundant.
Oh, completely,
because you have a client that's, you know, you have the northern hemisphere, you have the southern hemisphere, you have so many different clients that are buying for so many different climates. It's not about clients, it's about climates now. So I think this collection is a great example of that, but at the same time, thinking about it as an autumn-winter collection, there's something quite satisfying. And particularly when New York is, 17 feet deep in snow. I think also there's something really great about this is, you know, if you think about this as kind of snowfall and that kind of, there's something kind of eerily prescient. And also, as I said about the last Marc Jacobs show, you know, he looked at what everyone else was doing and decided to do a black collection. He knew that it was going to snow and everyone was going to get trapped going to his show. So I think that there's kind of this fantastic perversity, and that's the kind of in the moment thing that I really love, when Marc is kind of, you know, almost making a comment about fashion as a whole, and in this case about, you know, climate change.
And those patterns are like a sort of
But I
cloud
think just
pattern.
like knowing this is, you know, I think it's just a designer that's incredibly plugged in, that can be like, so it's snowing, what can we, you know, let's think about that.
But also the bigger picture of sort of, actually, what does one wear when? Those rigid rules aren't there any longer.
No, completely.
And is, you know, sleeveless cashmere tunic in air-conditioned life that might be freezing outside with a fabulous fur on
you've
top,
been working
a really
a lot
great
in,
answer.
You've been working a lot in Hong Kong, so you know it's, you know, there is this idea that if somebody loves it, what I've been saying for maybe like the last 3 months, that I'm just convinced that like if it's 40 degrees outside and you want to wear fur, you'll wear fur. If it's, you know, if it's minus 40 degrees and you want to wear sleeveless cashmere, you wear sleeveless. You know, it doesn't matter anymore. If you're rich enough, you can control your climate, and that it's almost like it's this.
So true, because you are into a car.
It is. You can exactly. You air condition
Yeah.
yourself. You heat yourself. There's this temporal climate, which really means if you want to wear it, you can wear whatever you want.
I think even young women who aren't that well off still dress in that way. You know, they just layer. You know, there isn't that same, or they wear a dress with tights and boots, and then they wear it without anything.
But you would still see it on the streets of New York, girls walking around in crop tops and skirts and no tights, and it's, you know, part of that street style, the whole thing as well. But yeah, those are also young girls hopping in and out of cars, like you say.
Which is exactly
literally in the snow and open-toe sandals.
You control it.
Because there aren't, every other New York designer seems to very focused on that city coat. There are no coats in here. There are only you know, fur jackets.
I really want that fur jacket. That's all I can think about. It's making me so happy. So has this done what it needed to do? Is this kind of the right? We all said, you know, it wasn't exactly what we expecting. It was quieter perhaps than we thought, given the sort of hoopla that surrounds it. But are we happy with this? Is this the kind of right thing to come at this point for Marc Jacobs?
I love that you can never expect. You can always have expectations, but you never know what you're going to see. And he will always exceed them in the way that it's so pure. It's just, it's perfect.
This is my
It's
favourite
very
section,
lovely,
that very
isn't it?
early.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you will revisit it again, and it will look different next week, and it will look different in a month's time. And it will look different when you try it on in the store and you want to buy it and you want to sort of, it's finally settled in that you want to be her, you know. and we've all got bobs.
Hit and
yeah, totally drifting around in our
just
in our cars.
Exactly. Pumped up. This is a really cheeky thing to do because we should be talking about New York, but just to put New York behind us because it is London. It's the first day of London Fashion Week, and I've got such an amazing set.
The first show has happened. The first show is actually London Fashion Week.
What were you excited about for London? Because I've got such a great set of Londoners with me.
Literally the whole
Yeah.
schedule. This is a city that you go back to back to back, and you're like, what am I going to see there? I've got to go there. Need to go there. Need to go there. Whereas in all the other cities, you're like, I'll see them in the morning, them in the middle of the afternoon, maybe go to them in the evening. You can't miss a thing.
I think you always find something new as well. Like there's so much happening off schedule, you know, with showrooms and presentations, and there's you know, it's true to say that there's a lot of great emerging talent, and you will always find something interesting as well.
It's St Martin's MA show today.
Yeah. That's going to be the highlight of my day.
Which is very much. I think it's fantastic when you come from New York, which actually is. This last day has become kind of the establishment day. It's Ralph Lauren, it's Calvin Klein, and now it's Marc Jacobs, which, you know, are these kind of bastions of New York fashion. And to come from that to a day where you see St. Martin's, where they're not even designers yet. That's how new they are. They haven't even properly emerged as designers. I think that's incredibly exciting, and it's kind of such a contrast between what those cities are, which are these commercial behemoths, who are also creative and who are also exciting in that way, but then to designers that are so incredibly young and new and fresh, and the people that actually those commercial behemoths are going to mine.
Sometimes it's not even crafted into clothing. There'll be a great textile student, and they will literally send a model down, like floating in a textile, and I think that's what's so special about that show.
I think that's a nice one to be excited about, Central St. Martin's. That we're impressed by Marc Jacobs, and I think that's a good note to end on, because I think it deserves a bit of reflection.
Modern wardrobe solutions.
And I just want
easy
that
pieces.
skin.
Easy pieces.
Easy, breezy, expensive.
Time to go to the spa now. I really feel like I need to float on a white towel. Thank you so much, Ollie. That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.